alone. I'm gonna rule hell by myself.
RNZ Pacific News, kia ora koutou katoa, ko te ia, Lydia Lewis. 18 women have thrown their hats in the ring for this month's Kiribati election. It's just 12 days before the first round of voting on August 14, with a second round to be held on the 19th. RNZ Pacific correspondent in Kiribati, Rimon, says the country has traditionally always had women MPs in Parliament, but not in great numbers.
Kiribati is a patriarchal society, so men usually have that upper hand when it comes to decision making or under meeting houses. It's quite surprising and also welcoming to see that 18 women are running in the current elections, which shows this is a great number compared to previous elections.
114 candidates have registered for the upcoming election, down slightly from the last poll. The leader of the independent group in Solomon Islands has questioned whether the island nation is still a free country. The SIBC reports Peter Kenny Lorea Jr. was responding to a statement from the government. Karoi Hawkins has more.
The statement accuses Peter Kenny Lorea Jr. of violating the One China principle and attempting to harm the Solomon Islands government's relations with Beijing after he attended this week's meeting of the Interparliamentary Alliance on China in Taiwan. Peter Kenny Lorea Jr. says he was clearly attending in a personal capacity and the government statement is misleading and regrettable. Earlier, Prime Minister Jeremiah Manele issued a directive that no Solomon Islands government officials or public office holders should visit, engage or make any commitment with Taiwan. Peter Kenny Lorea Jr. says government should be promoting, not restricting its citizens' constitutional freedoms.
An Australian asylum seeker resource centre spokesperson says Papua New Guinea refugees and their families will continue to suffer unless Canberra restores aid and evacuates them. 47 men were forced to Manus Island after seeking safety in Australia 11 years ago. They're now living in limbo in Port Moresby after PNG Humanitarian Services cut support due to alleged non-payment of bills by the Australian government. Charities, individuals and refugee advocacy groups have been financially supporting the men, but say donations have dried up. An Australia Department of Home Affairs spokesperson told RNZ Pacific in October last year that PNG took over the exclusive independent management of the remaining refugees in December 2021. Fiji's finance minister has stressed the complexities of migration and labour mobility across the Pacific at the Forum Economic Ministers meeting. Professor Biman Prasad says migration and labour mobility are important issues that come with both benefits and challenges. He says there is a global labour issue, especially post-COVID. Mr. Prasad stressed the importance of understanding why many Pacific Islanders are relocating to countries like Australia and New Zealand. Tuvalu's Prime Minister Feleti Teo and Fiji Prime Minister Sitiveni Rabuka are set to deepen cooperation in education, health, agriculture, climate resilience and connectivity. Mr. Rabuka received a courtesy call from his counterpart from Tuvalu, who was elected at the start of this year. They reaffirmed a commitment to establish a Tuvaluan community facility in Fiji to support the growing Tuvaluan diaspora. Prime Minister Teo acknowledged the link between the two economies and contributions of the Fijian diaspora residing and working in Tuvalu as teachers, nurses and doctors. In Aotearoa, New Zealand, 2 young Pacific researchers have teamed up with the South Auckland community to take on 2 of the major health issues facing Māori and Pacific peoples. Postdoctoral research fellows Dr. Siobhan Tuakoi and Dr. Samuela Ofanoa are addressing rheumatic fever inequities and researching Pacific gout interventions. Dr. Tuakoi says they want to make sure their communities are leading the way rather than those considered to be so-called experts. Both rheumatic fever and gout are significant issues in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And still in New Zealand, Ngāpuhi representatives have walked out of a planned session with the Prime Minister and other ministers at the National Iwi Chairs Forum in Auckland. The Prime Minister was expected to speak at the Iwi Chairs Economic Summit today, hosted by Ngāti Whātua or Ōrake. Ngāpuhi Iwi Chair Mane Tahere told the forum Ngāpuhi would not be participating in the planned session due to growing frustration within the iwi towards policy affecting Māori.
At Waitangi, when the government came to that iwi chairs, we looked at, and since then, the many issues that have arisen. We felt it appropriate not to listen to what was being said because enough is already being said. And so we left prior to the government entering.
Ngāpuhi will lead a hikoi in Kaikohe tomorrow calling for devolution of Oranga Tamariki resources to iwi to address the overrepresentation of Tamariki Māori in state care. New Zealand's biggest listed retailer is not going to go ahead with a proposed takeover from an Australian private equity group. The Warehouse Group says the proposed $590 million takeover, which had backing from the retailer's founder, Sir Stephen Tindall, doesn't have the required shareholder support. It says a key shareholder told the company it doesn't support the current terms by Adamantium Capital, meaning it won't have the required 75% approval from shareholders for the deal to go through. Warehouse Chair Dame Joan Withers says without board shareholder support, it's not prudent to pursue the proposal further. In world news, the overnight prisoner swap between the West and Russia is likely to boost the Democrats' chance of re-election in the upcoming US election. In total, 26 prisoners from 7 countries were swapped in the Turkish city of Ankara. 16 of them were from the West. The BBC's Peter Boz with this report.
Anything like this, a major win on the international stage in the final few months of what will now we know be Joe Biden's only term in the White House, it is bound to be good for him in terms of his legacy, but perhaps more important, certainly for Kamala Harris, is her potential to win against Donald Trump in the election. It is important because this is going to be a very close election, and any positive news that can be attached to the presumed candidate for the Democrats, Kamala Harris, is bound to be good for her.
An Australian government inquiry into the deaths of aid workers in Gaza has found that serious failures by the Israeli military led to the airstrikes on their vehicles. The airstrikes in April killed 7 charity workers from World Central Kitchen in Gaza, including citizens of Australia and Britain and Poland, as well as Palestinians and a dual citizen of the US and Canada. The Australian review identifies serious failures to follow Israeli Defence Force procedures, including mistaken identification and decision-making errors. Foreign Minister Penny Wong says Australia would push for accountability by those responsible. In sport, Olympic surfers are competing again in Tahiti after the event was postponed for the last couple of days due to unfavourable conditions. One of the favourites for the women's, Vaihine Fierro from Tahiti, got knocked out of round 3 by fellow French competitor Johanne Defay. Fierro won the World Surf League's Tahiti Pro in Teahupo'o in May. Tahiti surfer Kauli Vast will advance to the semi-finals after taking out John Duru, who is also a French competitor. The Solomon Islands have beaten Samoa 3-1 after they trailed 1-0 at half-time at the OFC Under-16 Men's Championship in Tahiti. Staring at elimination midway through the second half, Eddie Rukumana's side capitalised on a couple of goalkeeping errors to hit the front. First substitute Alan Makana pounced on a rebound after Samoan goalkeeper Philo Pilimase Tyrell couldn't level the scores in the 64th minute. And that's the latest news and sport for RNZ Pacific. You can read more on our website, rnz.co.nz/Pacific.